Hello everybody, Reggie Time here with my fourth instalment of the Sunday September social series. Just a quick explanation for those who aren't finding this video and not the previous three of what I'm trying to achieve in September, and that is to try and raise some money for some local social clubs in my area, or at least one local social club in my area that provides evening entertainment for people with disabilities and learning disabilities, mental health problems in my area. I'm trying to raise at least £150 in donations. So what I'm doing is asking guys who enjoy my content, enjoy the channel, enjoy the Facebook group, to make donations to help me reach £150 raised. And for each £10 I raise, I will produce at least one video. So far we've raised £100, so I owe 10 videos to the channel for the month. This is the fourth video, so I'm a little bit off the pace, but it's been a busy month so far, and I'm expecting it to get easier to produce videos going forwards. So I've no doubt that I shall reach the target of at least 15 videos before the end of the month. But for that to happen, the donations need to keep coming in. As I said, we've raised £100 so far, which is fantastic. But I really would like some more donations if possible. Keep me busy, get me to at least £150, make me produce the 15 videos, and then I'm also going to donate 10% of my Sky winnings for the month to the total. Ideally, I'd love to get to at least £200, which means I need to make at least £500 on Sky this month. Currently on about £100 profit, I think, and £150 in donations. So please keep the donations coming. Please keep supporting the channel and supporting the cause. So without further ado, let's get on with the hands. There's a couple of hands here that haven't saved properly in Poker Hand Replays. I'd check them all before I start, but because I do them over a few days, sometimes they tend to just break down for some reason. The program seems to be buggy. So there are a couple of hands that when I was recording the replays haven't been recorded correctly, but I remember the action from them, so we'll be able to fudge that as we go along. So here we go. Into the first hand. We're playing heads up 20 It's not a heads up table, but we were table starting. I've raised the 5-7 suit from the button, which is completely normal, of course. We check back this particular flop. Our opponent leads the turn here, and we have that the easiest call. I mean, yeah, of course we could be beat on the turn. You can have 10x for sure, king x for sure, but given we check back the flop, you can also just have like a bunch of air that's just trying to pick the pot up, some draws as well, some like jack queens, jack nines, queen nines, all those types of things, like gut shots, open enders, etc. So we certainly can't fold just for one bet. Then river comes in here, gives us like the low full house, which is fine. We're obviously happy with it. We wouldn't necessarily be super comfortable doing calling when he does this. I wasn't looking forward to him jamming. I was kind of hoping he didn't bet, and then he would check and we would bet and get value from king x. That was what I was hoping happened, but he went all in, and he went all in pretty quickly, which for me is usually an indication that someone's like very polarized to either having 10x or nothing. I don't think this is a bet we see very often with a king. I mean, maybe, who knows? I didn't know this player from a hole in the wall. So maybe he does this with the king. Seems pretty unlikely. I think it's going to be 10x or nothing most of the time. Occasionally 5, but not super likely. So I wasn't in love with it. I mean, usually when I'm calling 2x river over bets, I'm expecting to see a really good hand. But I guess an unknown in this spot. I mean, does he go all in with the 10? Would he bet smaller with the 10? I don't know. But I got curious and I hit the call button. And on this occasion, we were lucky enough that our opponent turned up with the total airball, which is obviously pretty bad play from him. But we'll take it. It was a good start to the video. So this next hand, it's not really much to say about it, but I put it in because it sets up the next hand quite nicely. There's not much going to happen in this hand from our point of view, but it does set the next hand up properly. So we've had a player, he's someone who plays regularly, but is unquestionably like a losing bad player. He's not like a bad regular or like a fishy regular. He's someone who plays like several days a week, but he's undoubtedly a losing player. He's pretty loose passive. So yeah, that's the player in seat 5. We isolate his limp, which is obviously completely normal. And then he just like piles 100 blinds in. I mean, when I see these lines from players, I typically expect to see pairs. Don't expect to see like unpaired cards too often. Expect to see a lot of pairs. Sometimes someone's just going to have like then there's like the aces, the kings, things like that. I mean, we block them with our ace king, but when I'm in these games, I don't need to be taking these like super high variance lines. Because the games are just that good anyway that we don't need to be like getting our money in with just like small advantages. It's fine. I mean, I think calling here would be probably a profitable play, but I just don't need the variance in my life. I mean, I'm in these games to like kind of play the typical old school small ball type way, which is like just try and see flops with bad players and hit home runs. So this isn't a situation where I'm going to be sticking on my money, and a lot of you guys will be thinking, "Oh, we'll just get the money in here, some bit of dead money in the pot." Going to be flipping against a lot of his range, etc., beating some of it. But it's just not my style. I mean, I'm willing to maybe sacrifice a little bit of EV here just to keep my mental game on track, to keep the session going smoothly. There's nothing worse than like getting buried early in a session because you've lost a couple of flips or what have you. Then it's really hard to recover your mental game for the rest of the session. So I'm willing. I mean, we've committed 5 blinds here. We don't need to commit another 95 just to flip. That's my take on these situations anyway. Some of you guys will no doubt disagree, but that's how I operate. So I did fold, and fortunately we got to see what he was doing it with because someone else called. And I apologise to the guy who talked about getting rid of the percentages in the last video. I tried to look how to do it. I couldn't see how to do it, but I am a confirmed moron at things like that. So it's going to come up with the percentages, I'm afraid. So he like limp jammed 100 blinds with ace queen. Had we known he was capable of that, then ace king would have been a trivial call, because I was just putting mostly on pocket pairs that I would either be flipping against, or maybe if he's doing it with ace and king losing. I didn't expect him to have too much of this type of thing, so I made the call. I made the fold. I think in future against this guy, we're just going to need to call with hands like ace king, but we didn't know that at the time. So yeah, we found out what he did it with, and the result of this hand's irrelevant because it just leads into the next hand. So this hand was like very soon after that. Can't remember exactly how soon after it, but very soon. We raised the ace queen under the gun. And this is the same player now, but he's with his like vastly reduced stack because of the all-ins he just lost, and maybe he lost another couple of pots in between, I'm not sure. So now we just got the decision. We're not going to fold to this now. It's just a matter of, do we just call or do we jam? I guess they're effectively the same thing given the stack size of the players behind us. I did just stuff it all in. Didn't really care what happened behind, to be honest with you. And this time our opponent showed up with the king jack. So we learned from the first hand that we just showed the previous hand. We made a quick adjustment and we got our money in pretty good shape in a close to 95 big blind pot, 90 big blind pot, and we were lucky enough to spike straight on the river, which we'll take. We'll absolutely take it. On to this next hand. I forgot to tag this player in the video. He was someone who was playing quite a lot of pots, mostly limping, rarely raising. When he did raise, he did use the pot sizing. My guess is his pre-flop raise size would be significantly below 10%, but he was probably playing way over half the hands he was dealt. So, maybe like if you were looking at a HUD stats, you'd expect him to be at least 50/5, maybe higher than 50, but certainly not a VP, certainly not a PFR higher than 10. So he's that type of player. So he raises under the gun. We call on the button, hoping to hit big and felt somebody. That was the plan. And the plan worked to perfection. We flopped our set. Our opponent bombs into us. When players who would typically lose passive open for pot and then start making large bets post flop, usually I think their hand's pretty face up as being just over pairs. Maybe once in a while he just goes crazy with ace king, etc. So my thoughts here were kind of, if he's got the overpair, we're going to stack him anyway. If he's got ace king, ace queen, those types of things, then why not let him catch up a little bit? No reason to raise such a dry board, really low SPR. We'll have no problem getting the money in on later streets. So we did just call. Turn is jack. He bombs again, and here I think we could and maybe even should just jam. I was concerned that if we did jam, maybe once in a short while he does fold king king, ace ace, that type of thing. I mean, if he's got a jack, we're getting all the money on the river anyway, so we don't care about that. I think probably in hindsight we would have been better just jamming here. I mean, he's just bet almost 50% of his remaining stack. He's going to be calling off with everything, but if he does just have like ace king, ace queen, he might fold if we jam. So I just thought he's bound to put the rest of the money in the river, so we just call and call again. Sadly, we get the worst river ever, and our opponent checks. So now all of a sudden we've just got jacks full of sevens. Our hand strength has been like not absurdly, but significantly weakened in this spot. And if he does have aces, kings, queens, etc., he's never folding to a jam. Does he fold? Does he call if I jam? If he has like ace king, ace queen? I don't know. What if he has a hand like pocket tens, pocket nines? Is he folding them? So is it worth betting pocket sevens to try and make him fold eights, nines, tens? Or do we just check back, beat ace king and lose to his over pairs, or his pairs higher than pocket sevens? And I decided to just check back. I was a little bit disappointed because you flop a set and you're like, boom, let's get the rest of his money. But this one out's just been like not ideal for us. I did check back, and it's not going to show here because I didn't input the hand correctly. But our opponent had pocket kings, so kind of unlucky that the board ran out the way it did, but then kind of lucky that we played it in the way we did to ensure we at least saved an extra 20 odd big blinds. I think if I played the hand again, I would just jam the turn. He would just call and we would lose more money. But I still think just jamming the turn maybe would have been the better play. Maybe even just like raising the flop, because if I do think he's got like a disproportionate amount of overpairs in his range, just get the money in there and then. But that's all playing results. I don't hate my line. I think it's just, I think the line was fine. Just the outcome wasn't really what we were hoping for. Don't think I remember this one. Maybe I will when. I thought I'd reacquainted myself with the hands, but possibly not. Is this one of the hands that's messing up? Ah, no, it's not. I remember the hand now. I did input it slightly incorrectly. The turn action's not quite right, but we'll explain it as we get there. So we've isolated a limper with King Jack, and we've got pretty favourable flop, to borrow a term from Andrew Neeme. It checks to us two loose-ish passive players. Oh well, one loose passive player, one player we don't know, but we assume he's not good due to stack size. We make a pretty big c-bet here. We're not going to, get folds. If he's got a king, if anyone's got a king or a jack, they're probably going to call. If they've got a draw, they're probably going to call. We don't mind if either of these guys raises of these stack sizes. We're happy just to get the money in. I think checking here on this particularly dynamic board texture would be a pretty big mistake. At this point, we're just betting, and if we get jammed on, then we're just going to put the money in and see what happens. But we get min raised, and there is no turn action here. I messed up. I just go all in at this point for like his last 256. I inputted the hand slightly incorrectly, so it looks like we just clicked it back and didn't set him all in, but we did. We're all in at this point. My bet size was like over £8. I just fucked up when I was putting the hand in. So yeah, we get all the money in on this street. Turn the nuts. And we were lucky to have turned the nuts because our opponent had flopped pretty damn well. So the reaction on this hand was just basically he check min raised the flop, we piled it in, he called us with the nuts, and then we got there. So a little bit of run good, but we'll take it because, you know, like everybody else, we get our fair share of run bad too. So I'm not going to complain too much about getting our money in pretty bad against an unknown on that board with that hand, because it just needed to happen. So here we are isolating a loose passive player with 2 aces. Pretty standard hand this as well. A perfectly reasonable flop, make a big c-bet or biggish c-bet, our opponent calls. Turn we just jam, we know he's not folding a king. Do you mean maybe he folds draws when we use his sizing, but we set up stacks to just jam the turn just about. Maybe it's a tiny overbet, maybe it could have been a flop bet slightly bigger so the turn jam so the turn bet wasn't going to be an overbet, but it's effectively the same thing. And yeah, the opponent calls and we're happy with life. Here's a king queen. And sadly for us, he gets there on the river, but that's poker. Last time we got it in bad, come out good. This time we got it in good and came out bad. That's just all part of poker's rich tapestry, and something we need to get used to if we're not good at handling them situations, because it's going to happen day in, day out, both ways, and you need to be able to roll with the punches. So in this hand, it says known fish, a little bit more detail about the play. He plays quite often, he's usually happy tables starting. He rarely has a stack size this big, he typically tends to buy in shorter, sometimes for random amounts with his case money. I presume sometimes he'll buy in for £16, but never buys in for 100 big blinds. He is pretty bad. He raises some hands pre-flop, limps a lot. And my guess is he usually excuse me. My guess is that he usually raises his strong stuff, limps his weak stuff. It seems kind of, or he did seem kind of face up to me in terms of how he plays his ranges. But not everyone does the same things all the time, of course. So we get this flop. It's much better for our range than it is his. But he can have lots of hands that has us beat right now, or has equity against us. He can have some like pocket pairs that have us beat that can't really take too much heat. Can't have us high carded too often. And if he does, king queen, king 10. How often are they folding? Not too often, I don't think. But I still think it's a spot where we should be betting with a pretty high frequency. Not in love with my sizing. I think we can go smaller there. We went around half pot. I think we can get away with around 30% pot on this board. Don't think we need to use that sizing. But that's the one that I landed on, so never mind. And opponent calls. Turn double pairs the board. He checks again. At this point, I was assuming he could have like a lot of pocket pairs that have been counterfeited. There's really no good reason to bet here. You know, if we have him beat, he's literally never calling. And if we don't have him beat, he's literally never folding. So it's just a situation where it's just an easy check back, try and get to showdown. 8 on the river, and our opponent pots it. And this is like typically a spot where I will just fold without thinking about it too often against like lots of players. But for some reason on this hand I just convinced myself that my opponent had like lots and lots of like small pairs that have been counterfeited, and this is like the only way he can win the pot. Don't think he does this with a jack. So I think his like range for doing this with value is going to be ace x, pocket eights probably. Doubt he does this with a jack. Maybe he does it with a jack. Who knows? I mean, it's possible, but those unlikely. And I just decided pretty quickly it's a spot where I just needed to call. And I'm not calling for a chop because I don't think he has a lot of king x he does this with. I actually thought I was going to win the pot a pretty decent amount of the time. I mean, when someone pots it on the river, we need to win like what, 1 time in 3, something like that. And it felt to me like we had a reasonable chance of winning this 1 time in 3. So I did make the call. And our opponent showed us basically the nut switches. Unfortunate, but I'm not unhappy with the hand. I think I played it fine. I think we could have c-bet slightly small on the flop. But given how the hand played out, I think I would be making that call with a decent frequency against that player. So I'm not too fussed that this time he actually had it. Moving on to this hand, this guy is a K Nutter. He's known Nutter. He's a blue tag player. He's maniacal. Um, Definitely a good player to have in your games. You'd rather not have him 2 seats to your left, but wherever he is, you're happy that he's there. We make a small raise. He'd been 3-betting with a decent frequency. Ace-5 suit is out of position. Is going to be way too strong against this guy. This is one of the hands that didn't load properly, so we'll have to talk you through the action because it doesn't look right. So we defend with the call, and we flop a flush draw. We check here. As it says call there, we didn't. The flop went, we checked. He bet something like, I don't know, it's quite big. I think it was close to full pot, like 280 or more. And we check called. Turn was the 10 of diamonds. We checked again. By now, it's me saying we're going all in there. We didn't. Let's take that back so we can make more sense of things. So on this turn, there is close to £10 in the pot. Not the £3.60. Sorry about this. It couldn't be helped. It did work at the time I uploaded it. Then it just, when I came to record it today, by the time I'd recorded it and I could watch it and think, oh fuck, this isn't going in right. So yeah, there's about £10 in the pot now. We check. He then he bet something like £5.40. So he went from like choosing quite a big sizing on the flop to a smaller sizing on the turn. And when weaker players that go from betting 1% of the pot on a flop to a smaller percentage of the pot on the turn, it's a pretty reliable sizing tell that they're not that in love with their hand. I mean, maybe they've got a weak made hand that they just don't want to check back with. Maybe they're bluffing, but they don't want to like make a big bet bluff. But either way, it's something that I don't think is particularly nutted. I thought if this guy had an overpair, he would probably just keep bombing away. I don't think he'd be too scared about the 10. But at the same time, going for like ambitious check raise bluffs against known nutters who have 3-bet, it's not something I'm that in love with doing either. But against this player, I just thought, no, we can't just call here. We don't want to like check call with a nut flush draw on a paired board and a 3-bet pot. I think we're just going to miss too many rivers and be forced to fold. So I actually elected to go with the check jam here, and they'll maybe hoping once in a while the guy folds pocket kings or something, pocket queens. Don't think he does very often. But against those hands, we have decent equity. And if he is just firing away with like an ace king, ace queen, ace jack, king queen, all those types of hands, then either we get him to fold a bunch of equity with his like king highs and what have you. And, you know, if we does happen to have at the top of his range, then, you know, we probably suck out, what, 25-30% of the time. So I did go for the check jam, and I was kind of wincing when I did it. But he let us off the hook and folded pretty quickly. He didn't even make us sweat, and I was very happy with that outcome. Just goes to show that you can occasionally bluff fish even when they're representing some strength. So here we have King Jack suited in a 20-0 game. This VTR means very tight regular. He's tighter than me, I think. I'm not sure, but he's at least as tight as me, possibly tighter. He plays 20-0, 30-0, and 50-0. And when he first came on the scene, I presumed he was a good player. He seemed like quite aggressive and what have you. And because he was playing 30-0 and 50-0 too, I presumed he was just like a good aggressive regular. But the more I played with him, and this isn't a criticism of him at all, the more I play with him, the more I realise he's just probably a solid nit, to be fair. That would be my read on the guy. He's a solid nit, and you know, not someone I'm particularly keen to play big pots with, because if him and I are going to clash in a big pot, it's often just going to be a cooler situation because we're both pretty nitty. So yeah, he min raised under the gun of like a super. The SLP is super loose passive, so super loose passive player calls. In hindsight, looking back at this now, the first time I've considered this, maybe we could have gone for the squeeze here rather than the call. We have a standard reg in the big blind. Don't think he's going to squeeze too often. I think maybe we should have squeezed, given it's four-handed and this like very tight regular only min raised from the cutoff. And looking back now in hindsight, I wish I had squeezed and get the very tight regular out. He's going to like fold a lot of his range in these situations. I expect and then we get to play a pot, hopefully with the super loose passive player, or we just take it down pre, either which is fine. So I don't like my flat here. Definitely could have taken a little bit more time over this and squeezed. But we go to a flop, we flop ourselves a top pair, and it checks through. We turn trips, so which is excellent news. We lead out, standard regular calls, and then surprisingly, and this really did surprise me, the very tight regular pops a raising on this board, and it was a weird spot. I didn't enjoy it. Did not like the spot whatsoever. I mean, clearly 3-betting's completely out of the question. And folding. I mean, you would imagine that's out of the question too. But then I was left with, right, so we call here, and what rivers? What do we do on rivers? If it comes down a heart on the river, do we just check fold? If it comes down, like a brick, do we check call? What bluffs does our opponent have here? What does he have that checks back this flop and wants to raise this turn? Is he the sort of player who would check a king on this flop multi-way? If it would, then why would you raise this turn? Because if he has a king, it's like, what can his opponents have that's worse that can call? Maybe he's got a king and wants to protect against some draws that are turning up. As I didn't know, I just didn't know. But with him being a very tight regular, I didn't expect him to be fucking around here and have very many weak hands in his range. His only draws, maybe he has stuff like ace queen hearts, ace jack hearts, stuff like that. I think he's like 10 jack of hearts, queen jack of hearts, those types. And probably c-bet with his like backdoor equity and what have you. I don't know. I mean, maybe he's turned a flush draw. Maybe he's checked back a set on the flop and now is raising. I don't know. I didn't like it. Didn't like the situation at all. And I went into the tank for as long as you could on Sky. And this isn't a troll, I promise you. I did elect to just fold the hand. Didn't like the situation. Couldn't think of too many good things that could happen, given that I don't think he's going to have too many bluffs here. I just didn't like it. I mean, yeah, we're folding trips with a good kicker, which isn't a lot of fun. It's hard to make trips. It's hard to make trips with a decent kicker. But when we get raised in a multi-way pot on the turn, having had a bet called already by somebody, it just felt to me that either my opponent was very strong or he was just making a very good play. That we had a hand that we could maybe defend, but I don't know. Paying off, it's like paying off these players is like paying off myself, and I know I do have some bluffs in that spot. If this player is similar to me, he will have some bluffs in that spot, but not very many. He'll more likely to have better king X, pocket sevens, pocket eights, and then his bluffs are going to be bluffs with that reasonable equity. So I didn't like it against a fishy player that we just have to call and call again there, because maybe they can sometimes have some worse hands. Does this player raise king 10 on the turn? King 9? Those types of things. I don't think he does. I really don't. I don't think he's raising a worse king. So I think his range is going to be better kings, pocket sevens, pocket eights, and then some draws. I don't think he has any air, or certainly not very much air in that spot. And it felt dirty. I mean, who likes folding these in these situations? I surely don't. But I also hate paying off here. If we check call here, also if we bet call here, the pot's going to be like 12, 13 quid on the river. He's going to be able to just do a small overbet jam, or make like an £8-9 river value bet and just put us in jail. Didn't like it. Didn't like what I saw in the future either. So I just got the hell out of the hand, and yeah, disappointed to have to fold, but I'm not at all unhappy with the fold. This is the last hand of the video. It might not be the last hand, I'm not sure. Is it the last hand? Yeah, it's going to be the last hand. We're playing a very rare table of 50NL yesterday morning. This hand was played. I was playing it because, these stack sizes aren't right, because the stack depth isn't going to be relevant in this spot really. But these two players, seat 7 and seat 4, were both players that had like less than 100 big blinds, and they were both tagged green. Couldn't help myself. I'm not really super sufficiently rolled for 50NL on Sky. For me, if you're playing 50NL, you want to be having a bankroll of like 3,000 plus. I certainly don't keep that much money on Sky. I don't keep that much money in my e-wallet. So basically, my bankroll isn't that big because I keep most of my bankroll in my life roll in a building society. So I don't play these games. Don't necessarily think I'm good enough to play in them when there's lots of decent regulars around. But this was just, it was a good table. It was like a 20 table being played out of 50 and I felt like I needed to be at it. So yeah, we decided to hop on. We get the ace queen. We obviously make a super standard raise, blind versus blind. We flop the gut shot with the backdoor flush draw, make the c-bet. And opponent calls. We turn the nuts, which I think presents us with some interesting sizing questions because I think our opponent's flop calling range is likely to contain a lot of Jack X and 10X, maybe some King Queen, although we block it a little bit. Maybe has some like 10 King Jack. So it's like, do we want to make a sizing here that allows him to continue calling with just his Jack X and his 10X, or do we choose a size that gets maximum value from like any of his hands that have improved from the flop to the turn, be that improving to a top pair or to a 2-pair type hand? And so do we go with like a smallish sizing here of like less than £3, or do we go with the sizing upwards of £4? And I elected to go with the higher sizing and just hope the king had improved him somehow, or his hand strength on the flop is sufficient that he can call this turn bet too. So I went with a slightly larger bet, but not too big, like 2/3 pot. He called again, and by now we're just loving it. Pretty confident he's in top pair or two pair plus territory. £14 in the pot. I think at this point our opponent had like £25 behind, something like that. So I think the question here was like, what sizing do we go with again here? Do we try and get the lot? Do we go with like the £25 into 14 bet sizing? Do we go with like a middling type sizing, like I don't know, like a £6-7 ish, just to force him to call with his all his bluff catchers, or do we go with like an 3/4 pot type sizing and target his top pairs, 2-pair plus type hands? I elected in the end to go with the third option. I think against regulars here, you don't want to be you don't want to be using the size I chose. I think it's a bad size against a regular. I think against a regular we need to be going like over betting or betting tiny here, but against a fish, I think these sizings are way more effective. So I did elect to go with that sizing. Our opponent called, and he had the Jack Deuce of diamonds, which was very nice. It's not been the just to like recap the month so far. It's not been the best of starts of the week on Sky with me. I mean, it's now Wednesday. Played on Monday and Tuesday. We made a little bit of money, but the games are just rubbish on Sky on Monday and Tuesday. And I've kind of been having my usual early week battle with my inner monologue of fucking hell, Reggie, these games are shit. Go and put some volume in on Unibet or Triple Eight. For the first time in a while, I've managed to resist that and just stuck at Sky. Yeah, it's been a pretty stale, dull couple of days, but that's just what I expect. If I wasn't in the business of trying to make 15 videos this month, I maybe wouldn't even have been cared very much that I didn't play on Monday and Tuesday, and would just start my poker week Monday to Saturday, which is typically, Wednesday to Saturday, which is typically what I do on Sky these days. I try and make sure I get decent volume in from midweek through to Saturday, and then if I don't get too much volume in Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, when the cash games are typically at their worst, I don't usually beat myself up, but because I'm trying to make videos, I am trying to put a few extra sessions in. But yesterday and Tuesday, yesterday and Monday were just pretty dull days. We didn't make much ground in terms of like increasing our profits for the month, but it's been a good month so far. We've lost a tiny bit on Triple Eight, not very much, just a tiny bit, and we're about around £100 up on Sky. So at the moment, we've raised £100 in donations. I'm currently going to be putting at least £10 into the thing myself, in from my profits. But irrespective of how much I make, I'm going to make at least a £50 donation myself to hopefully take the total to £200. So if you haven't donated yet and you've got this far in the video and you're enjoying the content, please do consider donating. I don't care if it's £2, £20 or whatever, just whatever you can afford. It all helps, and it will be very greatly received, very much appreciated. So I hope you guys are having a good week so far. Please don't forget to donate, don't forget to like, subscribe, join the Facebook group, etc. And we'll see you again probably Friday with the 5th instalment from this September social series. Take care everybody, and bye bye for now.